This is the Fitness Wisdom Podcast.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Fitness Wisdom Podcast. In today's day and age, weakness and stress and pain and discomfort and all kinds of chronic issues are prevalent more than ever. And it seems like the human body is less resilient than ever before. This is what we're going to be talking about today with my expert guest, Timothy Edmonds. He's the founder of BioResilience. And we're going to be talking about strategies and ways to gain more resilience in the human body and the reason why we are also losing the resilience in the first place. So welcome to the show, Timothy. It's a pleasure to have you.
No, thanks for having me. I've been watching your episodes recently, and I love the stuff that you're diving into. I learn stuff every day from you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Timothy. I really appreciate it. And that's how I found your work as well. And I got inspired to reach out to you because I feel like it's so important to share your message with the world because you have gone through your own personal health journey as well. And this is what led to you, becoming, inventing your own system of bioresilience. And I just feel that it's so important to help people to become more resilient these days. So why don't we start off by you telling us your own personal health journey, and then by the end of that, connecting it to what is resilience and why resilience is important.
Yeah, that sounds great. Gosh, my personal journey has obviously been lifelong, right? My family is very active, interested in health, wellness, sports, and physical activity. We really look at what's happening with our bodies. And I think we've always understood, my mom being a nurse, how important it is to take care of our bodies because it does lead to a lot of benefits down the road. So I went to college to study exercise science. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to be when I grew up, but I knew I liked the body and exercise and fitness. And, through that process, just went into personal training and health club management. And as I was growing up, I wouldn't say that I was really self-aware of what was happening with my body, but over the course after college and then becoming an adult and getting married and having children, um, the compounding effects of life were taking a hold of me, and they were happening fast. And this was when I was in my 30s. I just started moving at a different rate than I was when I was in my teens and early 20s, and I couldn't wrap my head around it. And a lot of the times, the quick answer was, oh, it's just normal aging. But I didn't feel like I was an old person, but I was
Mm-hmm.
starting to show some symptoms of, not being able to move and function like I thought I should be able to.
Mm-hmm.
I had some, I got married and we had some children, and
Mm-hmm.
my business, I like what I do for like my real job. I am in digital marketing space in the vitamins and supplements and personal care device industry. So we're
Mm-hmm.
always looking at ways to help those brands and businesses sell their product, identify the customer. And with my background, I have a unique set of experience where I can communicate pretty well digitally to customers that are looking for these types of products.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, I believe it was 2017, 2018, around there. I took on a client by the name of Douglas Heel. This is a person that I think that your listeners should definitely look up.
I
Douglas
should
Heel,
also.
in
I
my
don't know him.
opinion. Look, just so for the record, I didn't invent anything. My protocols are not of my own. They are
Mm-hmm.
just packaged uniquely, and the cornerstone for bioresilience and kind of self-autonomic mapping is in a large part because of Douglas Heel. Douglas Heel is based out of South Africa. He's worked with some of the top athletes, celebrities in the world, heavyweight champion boxers, pro golfers, and he's come up with a method based on the Chapman reflex points. This is the same stuff that Dr. Perry kind of works with.
Mm-hmm.
The Chapman reflex points is a system of neurolymphatic spots on the body that we know if we influence can show positive results in moving the body into homeostasis or just out of the sympathetic state and more in the parasympathetic state so it can grow and repair. So
Mm-hmm.
Douglas Heel has put together kind of a system on how to use these points. And I was working for him and I was doing digital marketing for him. And I was obviously interested, but when I was first working for him, I was kind of aggregating content for him to use on social media and doing email marketing. And really, I thought of it as, have you heard of RPR before?
A rate of perceived exertion. No, no, it's the
No,
other
no, no,
one.
no.
The
So our RPR is like, yeah, is like a reflexive point kind of
no.
repair protocol that top athletes use. It's
Mm,
these touch points to kind of get full range of motion out of your body so you can do this neurolymphatic reset and like get total mobility back. And
wow.
the top UFC fighters were using this, and I was familiar with RPR, but only as it related to sports performance. So that's kind of what I thought this guy did, Douglas Hill, and it wasn't, or it was. Douglas's B activated method, which is what he calls his method, is basically the foundation for RPR. And I kind of
Mm,
learned all this through the process where Douglas's the his disciples, I guess, went off and formed this RPR program and
mhm,
positioned it for sports performance. So that's kind of what I thought it was. But then as I was aggregating content and editing videos for him and like listening to some of this stuff, I was like, wait a minute, this is way more than sports performance optimization. Like this is
mhm,
like life optimization. So we would get on our conference calls discussing data and impressions and clicks and, who's downloading programs. And I started asking some questions about his method. I'm like, hey, man,
mhm,
tell me more. Like, what's going on here? And, he had his own cryptic way of talking to me.
mhm,
And it was interesting because I learned about the nervous system at that point, where, growing up and
mhm.
going to college for kinesiology, you don't talk about the nervous system, right? You
Yeah,
talk
yeah.
about muscular skeletal system and how that works together and biomechanics and, best ways to, optimize different pathways. So he
But
started
what
talking about
controls
the
the
nervous
muscles?
system. Yeah, 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 basic stuff. And
Yeah.
then we started getting into this the nervous system and the lymphatic system and like how blockages can occur and like how it can affect all the other systems of the body. And I started listening more, and then I would do calls with him and like I'd bring a list of questions. My youngest son, okay, is diagnosed autistic. And I was asking him, I'm like, hey, are there things that I could do to help support him? And he said something to me that like just rocked my foundation.
Light influences every single system of your body, from mood, skin health, cognition, energy levels, gut health, sexual function, training performance, recovery, wound healing, body composition, and so much more. This is why I make sure to block the harmful artificial blue light and expose myself to the beneficial wavelengths of light to optimize my biology. Upgrade your biology today by upgrading your light environment. Head over to emrtech.com/mobilityfitness and use the promo code mobilityfitness for a massive 20% discount at checkout for the best red light therapy panels on the market and the best blue light blocking glasses.
And he said, the best thing you could do to support your son is by you having a calm and regulated nervous system. When you
Mm,
have a calm and regulated nervous system, your entire environment around you changes.
mhm,
They can sense how you're feeling. If you're feeling dysregulated, nervous, anxious, upset, frustrated, angry, these are all emotions associated with a sympathetic nervous state. If you're
mm.
feeling calm and happy and satisfied and whole, they feel that too.
Do you
So,
feel that the
me being the
sensation is coming from the biofield? Do you know about the biofield, about this energetic field that extends beyond the body, that goes around the body? And do you think it's through that way?
I don't know a whole lot about it, but I know about co-regulation, right?
Mm,
Co-regulation is what they talk about in the polyvagal theory.
mm,
And it makes perfect sense, Andres, because
mhm.
if you think about like you see someone walk into a room and you can tell that they've been angry or frustrated or had a rough day without even talking to them. And it
Yeah,
like
yeah.
brings the whole vibe of the room down. Or
Mhm.
someone walks in and has like a pep in their step and like you can feel that they're radiating this positivity, right? And that's probably
Yes.
what you're talking about. But it's hard to see these fields, but it's impossible not to feel them, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So where I was looking at and looking up different protocols to help my son and different diets and detoxes and all this stuff to
Mhm.
effectively change him. right? Which was so immature. He told me, he's like, I am the reason that my son is unable to develop. That like hurt me because I'm like thinking, man, I thought I was doing everything I could to help him develop.
Mm.
And so like I stopped all these different ways of changing him or pushing him or trying to influence him, and I just started working on myself. And it was my responsibility as the father of the house to have a calm and safe, which is the big word here, safe environment.
Mm.
And if the environment is safe, everybody around can grow and repair the way they need to.
Mm.
The body naturally detoxifies, right?
Mm.
It does this on its own without any intervention. And so I put that to the test. All I did was self-work. All I did was become more aware of how my body was, what state I was in. Was I in a
Mhm.
sympathetic state? Was I in a parasympathetic state? It's okay to be in a sympathetic state. You're not going to stop the body from going into a sympathetic state. It's a system. It
Yeah.
does it on purpose, right? But what you can do is realize that it's very difficult to rationalize in a sympathetic state. Kind of like when you have heightened emotions, it's a terrible time to make decisions, okay?
Mm.
But if you know that things are taken care of around you, like what's the reason I'm in a sympathetic state? Prior to, I was always thinking that the environment was responsible for me being in a sympathetic state. If I got a nasty email from a coworker, if someone cut me off in traffic, if I don't know, if it was the weather was bad outside and I couldn't go for my run, that would be the reason I thought I was feeling bad.
Mhm.
Yet I never considered it was a chicken and egg scenario. Perhaps the body was the reason that I was feeling chemically imbalanced and not the environment. So what
Mm.
I worked on was when I was feeling, the emotions align with sympathetic state.
Mhm.
Angry, worry, fear, depression, I would run Douglas's protocol and map my way back. There's
Mhm.
simple interventions that we can do, and we'll talk about those, I'm sure, but like very simple interventions as far as just like you think of the muscles that are involved in the sympathetic processes. And the biggest one is like the diaphragm. We can
Mm.
influence the diaphragm by deep belly breaths, right? We're influencing the diaphragm. Chemicals are released throughout the body that says, I am safe. There's nothing that I need to worry about. But when you're not safe, you don't breathe diaphragmatically. You're a
Mm.
chest breather. So there's things you could do just as simple as 20 deep diaphragmatic breaths that change everything. It changes your
Mm.
environment. Like, you influence your environment, your body, it releases different set of chemicals. And when you would typically see something in opposition in your environment, you now can look at it through a lens of safety and see it as an opportunity. So
Mm.
one thing I practiced this, and then before you know it, my son's development changed. Maybe his development didn't change. I don't know, but the way I was perceiving things in my environment, the things with
Mm.
him were different. They were
Mm.
aligned. We felt more whole. And I only had wish I would have started it sooner. But
Mm.
we go through this life and things happen the way they happen. And what I did then further is, Douglas works primarily with practitioners. So he works with practitioners, teaches the protocol, and they go out and, work with their massage clients or physical therapy clients. And they use this to regulate the system before they do their interventions. Um,
Mm.
whether it be chiropractic work or whatever. And then the one thing I noticed as I was doing this is like, this is great for regulating the system, but I'm interested in making my system so resilient that these simple things in the environment don't trigger me.
Mm.
And also internally, my system is so resilient that it would take a lot for things to bother me.
Mm.
And also, the resilience doesn't necessarily mean building this maximum capacity and fortitude for everything, but it does mean increasing sensitivity, increasing awareness. Some of the
Mm.
biggest problems, in my opinion, are going through and just powering through situations, not knowing that you're in a sympathetic state and thinking you're operating rationally. And this is why
Mm.
it's good to have support, like other people that are working together with you. Like in my house, my wife and My wife can tell better than I can if I'm in a sympathetic state, right? And I could tell better than she can if she's in a sympathetic state. But
Mm.
what we do is we work together whenever like in other households, I'm sure if a spouse tells the other spouse to just relax, you're triggered and you're in sympathetic state, that would cause a big fight. In our
Yeah, yeah.
house, like that's what I get is when my wife says that to me, um, it's great because I know she understands how I'm feeling internally.
Yeah.
And then I get 10 minutes to go into my room, do some breathing techniques, run an activation sequence, and come back and rejoin the family when I'm feeling better. Okay.
Mm.
And this has been wonderful for our house. This has been wonderful for our kids. And, the most important thing I hope I leave them with is how important it is to know where you're at internally. If you can
Mm.
figure that out, if you know where you're at, you can easily map yourself into a place to make better decisions or to
Mm.
be able to help and support people. And we're in a world now where everyone wants to help everybody, but most people are helping each other from sympathetic nervous states. And all it does is
Mm.
just bring like, they call it when the cup overflows, right? The cup overflows when you're in a strong position, a position of strength, resilient, and you can see things more clearly. You can see more opportunities. But when you're in fight or flight, you have two choices, fight or flight. Actually, you have three, fight, flight, or freeze, right?
Yeah.
Those are your three options in a sympathetic state. When you're in a parasympathetic state, you got more than three options. You got unlimited options.
Mm.
So that's the whole story, man. I'm sorry for taking up a ton of time here, but
No, no, I
um,
love it.
it's wonderful.
So maybe you could go into the details a little bit of you said that you had some, personal struggles in terms of your health. You were noticing some things that are not aligning with your chronological age, let's say. So, but you were noticing biological effects. What were some of those symptoms you were experiencing? Because I feel like it would be super important to enlighten the audience with symptoms and issues or signs that they can relate to, if they are also stuck in this, what do you call it when you're not in homeostasis? I would call it like incoherence or disharmony. What would you call it?
Yeah, dysregulation,
Okay,
absolutely.
dysregulation. Yeah. So if you're dysregulated, let's say, and yeah, I think it would be important for people to recognize these symptoms because, as you said, that is so important to be aware, right? And your wife, and you also help your wife to become more aware of how you're feeling because you can see each other's state better from the outside. But it's also really great if you can start to recognize the signs as well from the inside to catch yourself and maybe to put yourself into a better position so that you're not going to go into that burnt out state where you're going to start to manifest all kinds of issues. So maybe you can tell us a bit what kind of physical problems you manifested in your body.
Yeah. Well, okay. So we'll make this very relatable to your listeners,
Okay.
right? We'll start at some of the simple things. Like what I do every once in a while on my Instagram reels, I'll do am I dysregulated, right? Or am I in a sympathetic state? Like these are some of the basics. And what we'll do is we'll go through like some of the simple things that people feel every day to some of the more severe stuff, right? So for me, it's like emotions are something that need to be expressed. Emotions are something that need to be considered as notifications also. So simple notifications like anxiety, worry, overanalyzing, overparenting, micromanaging. These to me are like things that we feel and see every day that are an instant sign that we're in a sympathetic state. So it's okay to be in a sympathetic state, but where we run into problems is when that sympathetic state extends beyond 30 minutes and goes into a day, a
Mm.
week, a month, a year. So maybe some of those things I could break up a little bit. So some of these emotions, they're great to express. You have to express them, but you have to know that it's an emotion of the sympathetic nervous system because the body doesn't feel safe for some reason.
Mm.
So any type of trigger from the environment that really spikes the heart rate, maybe feel flush. These are okay to have, but when you think it's a long-term problem, like for me, I noticed I would get triggered from an email from a coworker, right? An email from a coworker would get me so fired up. Another perfect one for that people can relate to is like you see a post on social media or you watch something from the news, right? And it's not aligned with your own ideas. These things can trigger us, and it's okay to trigger us because that lets you know where the point of differentiation is. The problem is when all of a sudden you feel like you need to take to social media and respond to comments or
Mm.
post something that like shares how you're feeling with the world. To me, that is you looking for justification of your emotion, right?
Yeah.
If you need to justify your emotions, then it's more of a long-term problem than a short-term thing that's going on.
Mhm.
So any type of normal, typical stress is
Mhm.
okay, needs to be expressed, but when it goes in longer duration, okay? I'm a part of some running groups, and what I've noticed in the communities on the chat is injury. Like the majority of questions is, hey, I've got plantar fasciitis. I can't get rid of it. Hey, I've got this knee problem. Can't get rid of it. And I think everyone is looking for, what's even more interesting is the comments that people want to share. A lot of the times, plantar fasciitis or joint pain or whatever it is, any type of discomfort. The common response for a lot of these is you need to do more strength training. You need to do more stretching. You need to do more this. You need to do more that. And a body that's in a dysregulated state cannot do more of anything. All that does is put you
Mm.
deeper in the hole.
Oh, I
So
love
I
it.
people don't consider when they have these chronic injuries. Like I've dealt with plantar fasciitis before. Okay. When I was probably in my 20s, when I was running and training, I'd run into these plantar fasciitis situations and I couldn't get rid of it. No amount of rest would get me into it. But what I never considered was why is the body not prioritizing healing this plantar fasciitis? There's other
Mm.
things that the body has prioritized. It is prioritized. I think back then I was self-medicating. I was drinking alcohol, right? So the body is more focused probably on detoxing my system than fixing my foot.
Mm.
Chronic stress. At that time, I was stressed out because of work. My business wasn't going in the direction that I thought it should. So I was
Mm.
always worried about the future of that. My body was so exhausted from that chronic fear that it didn't prioritize healing my foot. It prioritized just using the amount of time that it had during sleep to bring my stress levels down to a point where, my heart and brain didn't explode. So
Mhm.
these are some of the like chronic injury is a big one. Also the inability to, if you're overweight, to lose weight. Like the inability to um kick an addiction, the inability to actually just be able to calm yourself down. Some people don't even know what calm feels like anymore and they think they're calm. So like
Mm.
if you think you're calm, yet you still have chronic pain, you can't lose weight, you can't stick to a diet, you have disruption in your relationships, like these are all outside indicators that something internally needs fixed. It's
Mhm.
interesting. I'll talk to people that have the same relationship problems over and over and over again. It's like reoccurring. Yet some of them say, I keep making friends with the wrong people, or I keep finding the wrong partners. And really, the growth happens when you're like, okay, I'm the common denominator here. What is it that I'm doing that's attracting the wrong people into my life? And
Mm.
those are hard questions to answer yourself.
Mm.
And they're uncomfortable too. But really, in my opinion, at the root is a dysregulated body that doesn't have the capacity to expend energy on relationships, because relationships can be tough. You don't have the capacity to expend energy on healing from chronic illness. And then over the course of time, like me, I developed cancer. These are things that happen, in my opinion, and I'm sure there's more information that I don't know or not, am not aware of. But in my particular situation, and even the surgeons I worked with that helped me with my cancer treatment said the majority of people that come in here, we can tell are overstressed and
Mm.
haven't put the body in a place to be able to function optimally. So,
Mm.
like, there's a ton of things that I rattled off there in no particular order, but like, these are all things that I think people can relate to and see in their lives. And then
Mhm.
one thing I would say is let's look at the body and see if you are, there's no doubt if these are things you're experiencing, you're in a sympathetic state. Okay.
Hmm.
Let's take the time and map it back. It doesn't happen overnight. It can take several months to a year. I found with mine, I was also on anxiety medication. I was drinking alcohol in excess. I was having chronic injuries. I had like stubborn weight on my body. I couldn't commit to anything and I was disengaged from my family. Like these are the things that I was getting triggered by politics. These are all things that I noticed about myself that ultimately I had to reckon with internally.
Yeah, that was beautifully explained, and I think so important for people to understand that it's like an accumulation of multiple things in your life. It's not just the one thing, and there are many external factors which can be influencing your internal biology, right? But your internal biology can also be influencing the way that you see the world. So it's perpetuating that cycle, right, of negativity or sympathetic dominance, or or getting triggered all the time, as you mentioned. And I think now it's so important to understand our situation and to find ways to be able to self-regulate ourselves, to come back to homeostasis, as you mentioned. And I'm just wondering, what do you think? Do you think that everybody starts off with a different bucket size in terms of like a stress bucket, or do we all come to the earth with the same size, and then it's just that our daily life acts, habits, and behaviors influence, whether we are overwhelmed or not? We overflow the bucket.
Yeah, that's a tough question, right? I am limited, and I think my rules have been developed by the family I was born into and the environment around me, right? I think everyone is born into unique scenarios,
Hmm.
some better, some worse. But we get the cards we're dealt with, right? And
Hmm.
I do think that there's a path to resilience for everybody. I think there is a path to, they talk about it in epigenetics, right? Genes
Hmm.
only upregulate and downregulate if you give them the right environmental factors. So,
Yeah.
look, I love David Goggins. People have their opinions on him, and this is probably the most resilient person in the world when it comes to, you know, actually going after and pursuing pain. And
Hmm.
he was born in a rough situation,
Hmm.
but ultimately he had to come to a crossroads where it was either I can be a victim of my circumstances or I can use this as an opportunity. So some people that are born in hard situations develop a level of resiliency and capacity that people that are born in wonderful situations will never get. So,
Hmm.
I think there's opportunities for both. Fortunately for me, I think I was born in a really good situation. I have to In order to tip my scales, I have to go and pursue pain. I have to look for,
Hmm.
voluntarily find things that cause discomfort
Hmm.
and then overcome them. And not saying one is better than the other, but they're both have equally wonderful opportunities that are associated with them.
You made a great reel, I noticed on your page, about this pain pleasure balance. Do you want to dive into that a little bit? Like why it's important to have a balance of both and not more one over the other?
Yeah, man. Wonderful book. If you haven't checked it out, it's called Dopamine Nation. It's a fantastic insight into this neurotransmitter dopamine. And dopamine is responsible for our feeling of reward. The situations that we're in with our phones and instant gratification. Goodness, I remember the days when you ordered something online and it took like a month to get here. Now, if you don't get it in 24 hours, you get pissed.
Yeah, yeah.
So like we're in this environment now of instant pleasure, right? And if you don't get it instantly, you'll find somewhere else that you can get it instantly. And that has caused a disruption. And we don't tolerate pain. We can't because of our systems that we have in place. We don't have to tolerate pain anymore. We live in
Mm,
abundance. And this is what I found is like if you read the book Dopamine Nation, she does a fantastic job of identifying the science behind this, but
mhm,
there's things that happen. We have to be at equilibrium with our dopamine, right? That's what the
mhm,
body prefers. And if we have an abundance of dopamine, however we get it, especially if we get it through, I call it artificial means, but it's like our phones, gambling,
Yeah.
pornography, foods, caffeine. Like there's all these things that artificially spike our dopamine levels quickly. And when this happens, and Andrew Huberman talks about it also, there's a rebound effect of this dopamine. So what happens is the body needs to bring this dopamine down, and the best way to do it is through pain. So this is where you'll see like
Mm.
depression, chronic fatigue situations play out. I also think that there's like self-sabotage happens here. It's like, why do I always get in these like painful loops? And it's because I find ways to artificially jack up my reward and pleasure center that my body subconsciously like sabotages things that are going on. Like I could have something going pretty good, and what I'll
Mm-hmm.
do is screw it up somehow. It's like almost uncontrollable. And whether it's a work situation or a relationship situation, like you'll do something stupid to bring it back down and like, oh my goodness. And
That's wild.
it balances, yeah, it balances these things out. And you would have to be like so hyper aware of your situation that you can understand that this is happening. But I think it's so important that we pursue pleasure by way of pain, right? We pursue feeling good from doing a long run, from doing chores around the house, by doing things that are uncomfortable. And then we get this like natural sensation of accomplishment and reward. I think
Mm.
once I like adopted this philosophy, like my wife likes me so much more because like I will do laundry, like I do so much shit around the house, man. I do like everything because it's like I don't want to do the dishes. I do not want to do the dishes. And I
Yeah.
definitely don't want to do the laundry. But I'm like,
Yeah.
man, if I can take this on, like I'm building a capacity to do things I don't like to do. And then there's a reward. There will be a reward, and I don't care what it is. But, a lot of times the reward is the relationship that I develop with people because I'm willing to do the stuff that no one wants to do.
Mm.
So it's like a win-win for me, like externally and internally.
If there was one substance that could increase your energy levels, optimize mitochondrial function, boost ATP production, help to optimize your hormones, remineralize the body with ionic minerals, boost cognitive function, assist detoxification, and support your gut health via the microbiome, this substance is Shilajit, known as the destroyer of weakness. Shilajit is a herbal mineral substance made from the decomposition of plants and bacteria, this process taking place over thousands of years. It is harvested from high altitude locations, primarily the Altai and Himalayan mountains. And what makes Shilajit so unique is that it's made by Mother Nature herself. I call it nature's methylene blue. Not all Shilajit that you find on the market is created equally. This is why I only use and trust Mountain Drop Shilajit. They have an extremely high quality Shilajit product that has been rigorously tested for heavy metals and impurities. Grab yourself some Shilajit, the destroyer of weakness, today and head over to mountaindrop.com. Use the promo code mobilityfitness at checkout for a nice discount as well.
That's amazing. I think this is so good for people to like realize that it's so important to do the hard things, because the hard things actually, once you overcome them, you get this long lasting effect of this dopamine, elevation of dopamine that stays in your system for many, many hours afterwards, versus the quick, cheap dopamine that you were talking about. You got this fast rise and then this crash, which makes you want to keep on consuming that fast, cheap dopamine all the time, these type of activities, which, elevate it fast and artificially and too high. So it's so important to do what we're designed to do as human beings, which is to, before, in the past, we used to hunt and gather our food. We used to walk for really long miles in the sun. We used to be exposed to cold. We used to be exposed to the elements of nature. So this is automatically making us do the hard things, unintentionally. And this raised our dopamine naturally. It made us more sharp. It made us more cognitively focused. We could be better on every level as a human being to be able to survive, because the only reason why our system does everything pretty much is to keep us alive, right? So if we can stay alive long enough to procreate, that's the reason why our body does everything. And what I love about how you explain everything is that the body doesn't do something on purpose to hurt us. Everything that happens is, it has a function. Like when you say, for example, that, our body goes into this shutdown state, or it starts to manifest certain symptoms in the body, it's not like there's something wrong. It's actually meant to happen. So I would love for you if you broke it down into the steps which actually lead to us developing chronic issues and disease. Like, what are the different steps and signs that the body experiences before it gets to a really bad situation?
Perfect. Yeah, good segue. This is stuff that I've learned from Douglas Hill. Okay, so the body doesn't do no thing for no reason, right? It has an agenda always. So whatever is happening to you currently is for your benefit, whether you know it or not. The body has one priority, just like you said, to keep you alive. That's the body's priority. And what we were taught with Doug is the body does that by two ways. Two ways that you stay alive. One, breathe, right? Super easy. We all agree. If you don't breathe, you will die. Okay. That's a priority number one for the body. Number two, you have to move. People will argue and say you don't have to move to live, but we would argue that you have to move in order to do the things that you need to do.
Yeah, you have to hunt and
Now we
gather,
can
so that's movement.
yeah, that's part of our evolution, right? Okay, so here's the steps, and there's a YouTube video on our website, like if you ever want to go back and map the steps. So the first step number one, is there's an influence on the body from the environment, okay? So whatever that may be, there's a force coming from the environment that causes stress or trauma on the body. Stress can be physical stress or emotional stress. Trauma can be physical or emotional. This is coming from the environment, impact on the body. Okay, step one. Now, the body responds to the stress, okay, because it has priorities to keep you breathing and keep you moving. Okay, stress comes in on the body. It does one thing, or what we call like implosion. An implosion state happens, or like a contraction happens with the body. So stress comes in. I do a movement or contraction in order to respond to the force from the environment. So a good example would be in the animal kingdom. We use this one. A lion is going after a gazelle, right? The lion is the stress from the environment on the body of the gazelle. The gazelle then goes into a contraction state or an implosion state. Different muscles are recruited to help the gazelle escape from danger. Okay. Different breathing patterns. Like when we think about it as humans, a stress comes in from the environment. We see this implosion and contraction state happen through our breathing. We'll switch from belly breathers to chest breathers for quick oxygen uptake, and it's better for focus and cognitive abilities and your ability to be able to troubleshoot this stress or trauma from the environment. Another thing is our heart rate increases, right? This is contraction of the heart rate, the contraction of the heart to get blood to the affected areas quicker to help you escape danger. Okay. Now, from there, from this implosion state, a gazelle is a good example. Once the gazelle escapes the predator and gets back into the herd, within minutes, it returns to complete homeostasis. Heart rate is regulated and normal. Breathing is regulated and normal. All the muscles are functioning optimally for this animal to just grow and repair. Humans, we have complex brains, right? For better or for worse. And sometimes, if we're not able to return to homeostasis after this stress happened to the body, our brains and our bodies will stay in this implosion and contraction state. So, like, say you get a nasty email and it's bothering you and you respond, but work is done for the day and you're driving home and you're still thinking about this email. Like, why would this person say this? Why would they do that? I thought I was doing everything right. I mean, you know what the conversations that you have in your head, this goes on for a prolonged period. You don't move back into homeostasis. You stay in this contraction phase. The longer this happens over the course of time, you can move into the third phase. So if you don't go back to homeostasis, you can move in this third phase, which is like adaptations and cheat patterns. So remember, the two priorities are breathing and moving. An adaptation or a prolonged period of like holding on to this stress from the environment would be like our body converting into like more permanent chest breathers, right?
Mm.
We put a cheat pattern in place so we breathe shallowly all the time because we're heightened. We need heightened awareness to handle this stress, to figure out what the problem is. Sometimes in movement, this is where, for movement, the three muscles that we like to look at, diaphragm, glutes, and psoas. Those are the big three. That's the holy trinity of like the parasympathetic state. Those muscles are firing optimally, then
Mhm.
you're in a parasympathetic state. First being the
Mhm.
diaphragm. We talked about being a diaphragmatic breather. If you're breathing diaphragmatically, chemicals are released in the body that let you know you're safe. The
Mhm.
same goes for movement. To move optimally, the psoas and glutes need to be your main drivers for movement. And I
Mhm.
believe Ada Rolf, she's been able to prove this through her theories. When we are in a sympathetic state, the body will recruit other muscles to be the main drivers for movement. It will
Mhm.
recruit the abs to lock down and kind of perform the function of the psoas. It'll have the quads and hamstrings driving upward to perform the functions of the glutes. So, and we've tested this before. People in sympathetic states, their glutes don't fire, their psoas don't fire. We can test
Mhm.
this through simple it's a hip flexion test. So, like, if you're in a sympathetic state, your psoas doesn't fire, your
Mhm.
glutes don't fire. You recruit other muscles, and this is what I was talking about with the runners group that I'm in that are trying to sort
Mhm.
chronic injuries. It's
Yeah.
guys, you're in a sympathetic state. You're not using your diaphragm for breathing. You're not using your glutes and psoas for movement. You're recruiting other muscles, which the other muscles already have other functions within stability and movement besides what we need and require the glutes and psoas to do. So
Mhm.
this is where you use knee issues, or like even for me, like I was having issues, and we've tested this where my tibialis and calf were doing the functions of the glutes and psoas. And like what we found is even the shoulders tend to drive in, and this is more the contraction that we talk about. The shoulders on the right side and the tibialis and calf of the left side will kind of drive across to help the
Mhm.
psoas and glutes function. And it's like my
Mhm.
shoulder doesn't need to be involved in that. My shoulder needs to be
Mhm.
taking care of things on the upper body. My
Mm.
calves and tibialis need to be responsible for foot mobility and stability, not
Mhm.
primary functions of drivers like the psoas and glutes.
Mhm.
So this is where I ran into plantar fasciitis. It was overuse of muscles that didn't need to be involved in driving, taking the priority of the calf and tibialis off of foot mobility and stability and made it more about movement. So I was in a sympathetic state, and this is how you run into plantar fasciitis long term. So you can, at this point, in this adaptation or cheat pattern, provide an intervention and break it up and map your way back and move to homeostasis. Most people don't. Most people go online like, how do I fix plantar fasciitis? And it's like,
Yeah.
do more exercises, do more stretching. And like,
Yeah.
okay, I've completely ignored that my body's in a sympathetic state. Now I move over to the next stage, which is adhesions and lockdowns. So what the
Mhm.
body will do is it needs to keep you moving, it needs to keep you breathing. What it'll do is it'll cause tissue buildup via adhesions to continue to run or walk or move and breathe in these patterns forever. It says this guy is not going to map his way back to homeostasis. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put down layers of tissue because of chronic cheat pattern movements, and we're going to move like this for forever, and
Wow.
that'll keep me alive because at least I know I will be breathing and moving.
That's
And this
crazy.
is like, well, this is also where like there's conflicting opinions too, because like you go into a massage therapist or you go into any type of physical therapist, they'll notice these adhesions and buildups of tissue. And it's like, oh, you got a
Mhm.
knot here and it's tight here. Let's go ahead and
Mhm.
break that up. Well,
Mhm.
the body didn't put those adhesions down for nothing. Like it put it
Yeah.
down to
Exactly.
maintain these patterns. So if we
Mhm.
go and break up these adhesions, we could run into big time problems because now our crutch is gone and we still haven't fixed our sympathetic state.
We're gonna
So
build a
this happens.
compensation somewhere else in the body.
Yeah, exactly. That is a compensating pattern that you've developed, and now you have these adhesions in place to continue this movement. And if you don't believe me, look at someone who's been in these patterns long term and you see unusual gaits, or even like some older
Yeah.
people that are kind of hunched over and slouched over.
Mhm.
This is like and you see tissue buildup. Like even in the back of the
Yes.
neck, you'll see people with these massive like hunches there. And it's because
Yeah.
of the tissue buildup, because the body's trying to maintain some type of structural integrity, right? So again, this is a good point where if you can intervene, move the body to a parasympathetic state, then break up those adhesions, reactivate the psoas and glutes and diaphragm, and then you can move into homeostasis and then work on that. But what happens is we ignore these adhesion buildups and then we move into like pain and discomfort. Like pain and discomfort because of long-term cheat patterns and tissue buildup that's now
Mhm.
causing this plantar fasciitis that I can't get rid of, this hip pain I can't get rid of, this shoulder pain I can't get rid of. And this is when we like go to our doctor and they prescribe anti-inflammatories or painkillers, or possibly even suggest surgical intervention, right? Where it's like, in my opinion, surgeries can be avoided if you just stop there,
Mm.
get your system calm and regulated over time, and then and then you break up the adhesions, you go see a massage therapist, they get things working, they work on this neural lymphatic, get everything flowing smoothly and optimally, and then
Mm-hmm.
you can avoid surgery. The problem is like we go in, we have a shoulder. The surgeons are excellent at their jobs. They fix the shoulder. They fix the issues going on with the shoulder. What they
Mm-hmm.
didn't fix is your moving and breathing patterns because you're in a
Yeah.
sympathetic state. So you can
Yeah.
go back and see them again in 3 years and pay them, $50,000 and they'll fix your shoulder again, right? So this is like obvious it should be obvious, but maybe not, right? And then, if you're in pain and discomfort for a long time, this is when you will medicate through prescription drugs. I was self-medicating. I was, using alcohol, to kind of suppress pain and the fact that I was in a sympathetic state and just kind of just escape. And look, any type of that long term is going to be a problem.
Yeah.
Any type of a long-term medication, in my opinion, will cause something to happen differently.
Absolutely.
Um, and then the final step is the chronic issues, the cancers, the neurological disorders, chronic pain, chronic fatigue, addictions. The good news for all this is like it's not over. Like if you can recognize like some of these things, like, oh shit, yeah, I am feeling this way. It's like maybe I should take a closer look at my my nervous system.
Yeah.
Am I in a sympathetic state? I can guarantee anyone that's feeling this is in a sympathetic state. There's no question about it. But it's important to then, I don't think that therapies and interventions are wrong. I think that they work better when the system is regulated. So like
100%.
going in to have a shoulder surgery is probably not a bad idea in some situations, but it's like make sure your system is calm and regulated so it actually heals. It gets
Yeah.
fixed.
Yeah.
That's the steps. I mean, like from start to finish, how you get there.
Mm.
Now, how you get back is a different story. And really it's one, being aware of this stuff. And
Yeah.
then two, like knowing how to regulate your system. So
Yeah.
how do you regulate a system? And
Mm.
I think Dr. Perry does a great job of explaining like how to do that neurolymphatically. I think
Mm.
that we can influence our and I have like Doug has protocols where, there's a system of neurolymphatic points where we do step 1, 2, 3. Step one
Mm-hmm.
is getting the diaphragm, psoas and glutes online. Step two is breaking up adhesions. And step three is, expanding. Once you get into a point of homeostasis, though, that's when we can start building resilience. But if you're
Mm.
in any of those other stages, you can't build resilience from those points because the body will not
Mm.
prioritize your capability to build resilience.
Methylene blue, an incredibly powerful substance that has an affinity for the mitochondria. Discovered in 1876 at first as a textile dye, it didn't take long before it was noticed for its unusual biological effects. Here is a list of all the things that methylene blue is known for. My personal favorites, it is effects that it has on the mitochondria. Methylene blue acts as a redox agent. What this means is that it has the ability to grab onto electrons, donate and transfer them anywhere where energy is required in the body. And we know that most Neolithic diseases these days are due to a lack of cellular energy, ATP. The more electrons we can get through successfully along the electron transport chain in the mitochondria, the more deuterium depleted water we can make, as well as the end of energy production, which is ATP. The energy that we need to power all our cellular processes come from electrons. So it only makes sense the more we take care of our mitochondria and our energy production, the more energy we have for our overall health, well-being and vitality. If you wish to explore the methylene blue that I use, head over to meragimedicinal.com/mobilityfitness and use the promo code mobilityfitness at checkout for 15% off your entire order.
What's mind-blowing to me with everything that you just said just now is that basically everything that we're experiencing may not even be what we think we're experiencing, if you know what I mean. It's like, it's not because I've overused a specific muscle, but why is my muscle not like operating as it should, or why is it being overused in certain passive movements or situations, which is actually causing me pain and discomfort? And then that could be all just because of my nervous system state, or all of these different health conditions that people are experiencing may not be because of, okay, it can for sure be from some environmental factors contributing to their nervous system state, but their nervous system state is the thing which is actually slowly manifesting those things in their body in the first place. And if we can actually recognize, as you said, from the breathing, from the way that our muscles are feeling or moving, we can maybe stop it in its tracks before it goes too far. And we can start reversing and going back to homeostasis, regulating ourselves before those adhesions are taking place, before we are starting to become, it starts to become more challenging to come back from that position. But as soon as it goes that far, then we'll have to do like a bit of a longer route, I assume, to get back there. But yeah, it was great what you said at the end about if you are going to do any type of interventions or surgeries or whatever, if you don't go in regulated, well, you're not going to come out of the intervention regulated, right? And then the reason of your the dysregulation in the first place is the reason why you got there in the beginning. So if we actually are able to, get out of that state which caused the problems in the first place, maybe we can prevent a lot of the things, like anyway, like in taking the medications or having the surgeries or whatever, So we have so much power in our hands that we don't even realize. And I think what was really important there at the end that you mentioned is that we cannot build resilience if we're in that state. So I would like to ask this one question before we move into how do we, what type of things do we do to build resilience? So what do you think from our modern world and environment, what type of things are contributing to us having a dysregulated nervous system?
I think it starts pretty early. I would probably say, and this is as opposed to like pointing the finger at the environment and development of technology and these cool things, I would think the real problem is in awareness and education, right? At an early age. Like my wife's a teacher and she works with a lot of special needs students, and we are able to, at that age, influence kids and show them to become aware of what they're feeling early, aware of what the next steps are when you feel a certain way, and to honor the body and be able to understand the language of the body, right? So I think like the biggest problem isn't in the environment or changing conditions or toxicities or seed oils or whatever. We can go on and on. We can name them all. It is in lack of awareness. And if like that's the one thing, like the only reason I did this bioresilience site and like started like capturing content was like I wanted to give my kids something that they could plug into AI and say, hey, what the hell was dad thinking about when he was alive? And it was like, it's all this information where, a communication method with the body. Because my life has completely changed once I started understanding what my body was trying to tell me.
Wow. That's amazing. That was such a perfect and short answer, which I wasn't expecting at all, actually, because I was expecting for you to say all the trauma that we experienced in childhood, all the different kind of things, like all the electromagnetic fields, the cell phones. I mean, yeah, as you said, like there's a massive laundry list of things which could for sure be contributing to a dysregulated nervous system. But again, at the same time, what I loved, what we discussed with Dr. Perry on his episode was the level of your bucket, meaning your stress bucket. The bigger it is, the more stress you can tolerate, right? So a stressor is not the same for everybody. So one workout can knock someone over the edge and cause some disease manifestation. It could be like the last drop that, puts them out of it. And then for you, it could be the best thing in the world. It could be the thing that makes you stronger, more resilient, makes you come back fitter and better than ever before. So I think that's also so important to talk about, that, everybody's so bio-individual, and we can't just say that, this is like causing problems for everybody. But I mean, for sure, there are some certain things like the artificial blue light, which dysregulates our circadian rhythms, and some technological advancements, with the radio frequencies. Those are impacting us on a subconscious level, even if we're not aware of it, even if we're not exposed to those things. Just by being surrounded with those things in the environment, they are influencing our nervous system state. So, but yeah, as you said, that if you are aware, then you are aware about those things. You are aware about all of the things, and then you're able to make better decisions to recognize that, oh, when I do this habit and behavior, I don't feel so great, or I fall into these compensation patterns like you talked about. And then that will make you realize, okay, what can I do in order to bring myself back? And there's 1,000 different tools out there to regulate your nervous system, like humming and breathing and going out in nature and grounding and all this different kind of stuff, and even the type of food that you're eating as well. So maybe I would like to move into now what type of things, build resilience in your eye, from your view.
Yeah, first off, I think it's so important before you attempt to build resilience to make sure that you are calm and regulated. Like what I find is it's such a natural progression. Once you've been in homeostasis, the body craves this, you almost develop desire for more, right? The body wants it. So I find that like when I'm like purposeful and intentful about like, boy, I need to get better. I need to get stronger. It's almost like that is a sympathetic trap, right? It's a sympathetic trap because it's like, oh, the reason I'm getting so stressed is because I don't have enough resilience and I need to build more. So let's go and we're just going to go, I'm getting up tomorrow at 3 a.m. and I'm going to run 20 miles and, and I'm going to eat like this. And it's like, dude, that is something that a person in a sympathetic state would say. So it's like, it's a double-edged sword and a trap.
Yes,
But
yes,
but like it takes an extreme amount of sensitivity to understand that like even like over healing and hyper focus on healing is a sympathetic response. So it's
yes.
like it's a slip and dangerous. I
Mm,
find that taking on when you're in homeostasis, the body naturally craves this pursuit or
mm,
this wanting to strengthen itself. And you know this because it's like some of these things seem natural. Like the decisions and choices you make are natural. And then when you look at it, it's like I've actually chose to do something that is uncomfortable
mhm,
naturally. Like I wasn't forced into it. I didn't have to coerce myself into it. That is where true resilience is built. And I think that like when we talk about, I think Dr. Perry and you explain it pretty well, where it's like, hey, look, everybody's got a different size bucket and we can only handle so much. And what our goal would be to increase the size of that bucket, but
yeah,
also be able to increase the awareness of knowing how much water do I have in my bucket right now?
yes.
How much
And to not
room do
fill
I
it up
have
in
in
the
my
first
bucket?
place.
Exactly, exactly. And simple rest and time off can work if you're in homeostasis, but rest and time off doesn't work for like healing if you're in a sympathetic state.
Mm,
So it's the recovery has to be active and it has to
mm,
require intervention of you, working on your nervous system to get it regulated.
mhm,
For me,
mm.
like things like what's a challenge for me is expanding my network of people, having a conversation with you, reaching out and trying to develop new relationships. This is something that only a body that feels safe will do.
Mm,
Having a craving for a new hobby, or I'm interested in things that you might have just interest in that you've never felt like it was appropriate to dedicate time to. Like these are like probably next level things that I think you start thinking about and pursuing when you're in homeostasis, you're regulated, and the body craves growth.
that's crazy. Yeah, I think when people realize this, then they will realize, wow, before I start to do anything difficult, I should just try and regulate my nervous system state first before I start to try and do more difficult things, thinking that, oh, I'm going to get more resilient by doing more of the hard things. But yes, there is, like, as you're saying, there's clearly an order to these things. First, regulate your nervous system, get to a point where, it can flex between the two states, the sympathetic and parasympathetic, and come quickly back to a parasympathetic state after you've done a sympathetic activity. And if you find that through your body language, as you were saying, it's not coming back to homeostasis, then clearly your bucket is overflowing, right? So we need to start eliminating. A lot of the times it's not about doing more things, it's about removing things from your life. So, the more
Sure.
things that well, the more things that we remove from our life, then the less stressed our body is in the first place. So then that may allow us to go more into a parasympathetic state to initiate healing and repair. And then from then on, we maybe have more of the energy capacity to do more of the hard things, which will then slowly start to build resilience. Would you agree?
Exactly. Think about like, and I'm sure you've talked about it before, flow state or like kind of being just aligned to nature.
Mm-hmm.
Um, these when you're in homeostasis and the body's ready to expand its capacity, there's no decision, right? It's like it's a flow. It's natural. You automatically gravitate to the thing the body wants to help expand. Like this is where like, oh my gosh, I didn't even like I knew I wanted to do this, but like things kind of fell in place for me to make these things happen. One of the other reels I did recently was like, when do I start? You know,
Mm,
do we always wait for optimal conditions to start things?
yeah.
But like, I think the more I think about it, like when you're stuck in this indecision is probably the best friend of the sympathetic state. When you're able to just take a step and it's like unwavering faith. Like that is like, that is when you're in homeostasis and parasympathetic and like now you're doing stuff to build. I mean, it's like, it's so natural and it's probably hard for people to like even like think about what that would feel like. But I'm sure there's plenty of people out there that are like, I'm in flow state 50% of my life. And it's like, okay, that's someone that has a optimized nervous system. And they do understand that it's not always perfect. But they know when they're aligned. And when you're aligned, it's like, man, this is where magic happens. It's like
Mm,
and this isn't airy fairy stuff. It's not like weird magic. It is like this is actually how things work. And
mm,
the more we can be in tune with our nervous system is communicating with other people's nervous system all the time. Like you don't even know
mm,
this is happening. The nervous system is picking up on cues from the environment all the time.
mm,
So if you can strengthen it and almost give your nervous system some confidence, it will make decisions on your behalf, where
mhm.
you don't even have to be in there and you're more of an observer and enjoying the ride.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, and then that made me think a little bit about what do you think about emotions and them getting stored in the body or manifesting as physical issues? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, this is exactly the roadmap that we talked about, the stages that we talked about. Like there's
Yeah.
a trigger in the environment, there's a stress response, emotional, and what happens is how it gets stored in the body is through, this contraction state, and we go into like these adaptations and adhesions. And is that adhesion a tissue buildup because of an long-term emotional response? Yes,
Hmm.
of course. There's your emotion
Wow.
stored.
That's crazy. Yeah. Yeah, I didn't realize that that was connected to the emotional piece. I thought that maybe just the fact that the nervous system can get thrown or dysregulated into, stay stuck in a sympathetic state for many different reasons, right? It doesn't have to be necessarily emotional, right? It could be just that you're just overworking yourself or overburdening yourself, maybe overstressing your system, and it can be stuck in that state. I think it's fascinating to understand the physiological mechanism behind, how it actually manifests in the body. I think that's super important for people to actually understand because it just shows you how much power you have over your biology just from the power of thoughts and how your thoughts and emotions can influence, your biochemical reactions inside of your body and therefore the manifestation of all kinds of things, whether that is positive or negative, because it can go in both directions, right? It's not only if it can manifest negative outcomes or things that we do not desire to experience in our body, I'm sure we can manifest positive things as well. Like you just said that,
Yeah.
we can the flow
So
state.
think about it like this. It's like control your controllables, right? You can't always control your thoughts. You can't always control your emotions. Where the point of control lies is via awareness and when you can intervene, like make a physiological intervention. I feel like we have more control over our physiology than we do our thoughts and emotions, right? So it's like the body, go from the bottom up, work on the body, do your activations,
Mm,
do your massage, do all your regulating techniques. I may not be able to get rid of this thought, or I might not be able to kick this emotion, even if I can rationalize what a waste of time it is, but I can work on my body, right? And I can go through these techniques and get all this stuff moving and through. And then I revisit it. And then all of a sudden, it's like it went away, you know? So I think that that's where our point of control is through the physiology.
It's so cool because actually, yeah, when you realize that the majority of the brain is dedicated to movement and breathing, it makes you realize, wow, actually, the brain and the body just really wants you to move because that's the way that it gains safety. And the way that we move through our environment, you know, the way that we receive our information, that we're supposed to receive our information, whether that's from our eyes, without wearing sunglasses outside, being barefoot, you know, in contact with the ground, moving, you know, with our hands and our feet, and just being in connection with nature more, that is actually feeding our nervous system like healthy signals. And then that's able to, you know, self-regulate our system like automatically. And I love it how you said that we, you know, we can influence our mental state, you know, from the body instead of the other way around. And I 100% agree with you that it's way harder to think about, oh, I'm mentally, I should calm down now, and therefore my body calming down. It's very rare that you can do that unless you're a monk or somebody who has some superpowers like over your brain. But I feel like most people, as you said, like it's easier to go through the body and influence the mind and I can resonate 100% with that because every single evening I do Dr. Perry's lymphatic big six, and I always do it all with a massage gun, and it feels amazing. And because in those areas of the body of the big six, it's not only the lymphatic points, but there's also, you know, the vagus nerve as well. So you're stimulating that parasympathetic state automatically by doing the big six. And if I do have my mind filled with thoughts by the end of that, which takes me 2 to 3 minutes to do, it's like my mind's empty. It's crazy. And that just shows you how powerful it is to actually just mobilize those emotions through your body, because emotions are not just something stuck in our head. They're literally a physical manifestation trapped somewhere in our body. And as soon as we get that stagnation moving, you know, we're basically release it out of our body. Just like how a gazelle shakes off the stress, you know, once they've gotten away from the lion or the tiger, and they self-regulate themselves by calming themselves down and shaking, you know, and moving their body. I feel like as human beings, we know innately what to do, but we've just deeply forgotten, you know, our roots.
Yeah, the one quote that Doug Heel always says is happiness is a physiological state, right? So if it's happiness that we're looking for, there's only one way to get there, through the body.
Wow. Wow. It's crazy. Well, this has been a fascinating conversation, Timothy. I really, really enjoyed it. And I'm sure that the audience will have gotten like so much value out of this conversation as well. So would you like to leave the audience with any last words of wisdom before we close out the show?
I tell you what, like increasing your awareness, you know, having the understanding of what it is that I'm doing that could help me identify I'm in a sympathetic state. What could help
Mm,
me identify that I'm in a parasympathetic state? I think that like what's awesome is like listening to podcasts like yours and the people that you're talking to and the insights that you bring. How do those messages land? You know, is it something that triggers you, or is it something that you sense as an opportunity? Is it something that you have the capacity to start being aware of? You mentioned the electromagnetic stuff and the blue light and all these other things that could be environmental factors. It's like, can you understand those and see that as an opportunity for you to kind of expand your system? Or is it one of those things that just puts you in chronic worry? You know, we
mm.
consume a lot of this. I'm like a huge fan of like biohacking and all these other things, but like it can consume you.
Yeah.
And if you notice that it's consuming you, that just means you're in a sympathetic state. Doesn't mean you need to stop consuming it.
Mm,
Means you need to adjust the body so you maintain the perspective that you want, not the perspective that you're being influenced by. So,
mm.
um, that would be it. I think that you're doing some awesome stuff. I've loved this
Thank you,
conversation, and
Timothy.
I thank you for kind of letting me look. A lot of this stuff, like everything I'm doing, is for personal benefit. Like when I can talk to somebody about this kind of stuff, it just drives home these ideas and concepts to me, and then I can think about like, boy, there's so much opportunity that I'm missing out on that I could be doing, and it's like I appreciate you allowing me to kind of express this, and it really helps me.
Well, you really know your stuff, and your own personal experience is what led you to, you know, to bring this message here to the audience today. And I feel that it was super informative and valuable, and so many people will relate to your story and every single thing that you said. So thank you so much for coming on the show. And where can people find you and connect with you and work with you if they want to?
Yeah, the website is bioresilience.co. Tons of free information, blogs, concepts. I write all this stuff from experiences that I'm going through and concepts I'm working on. And then there's some videos. And then on Instagram at bioresilience, try to put out reels. And again, it's like we're never trying to tell people what to do. I'm just talking about my personal experience. And if there's some synergies there and benefits that people can grab onto, then there, and it's just me. I don't have a team of influencers or content creators.
No, your
So
content
this
is
is all
great. I love it.
thanks. No, yours is too, man. I love it. I learned a lot from actually the way that you're putting stuff out. So, and I know a
Appreciate it.
lot of people are benefiting from the stuff that you're doing. So please keep up the good work. I love it.
Absolutely. I would love to do it again in the future.
Let's do it. I'll come up with some new ideas and then we'll bring it to the next one.
Exactly. That's what I love to do. I love to study people's social media channels and, different blogs and things that they write and put out there. And then once we have like a bunch of new things to talk about, I think it would be super interesting to go for a part 2.
I tell you, I'm doing a deep dive right now into neurotransmitters, hypothalamus, adrenals, pituitary, stem
Nice.
cells, and all part of a personal experience. So as I have data, new content will come out. We'll see what it looks like.
I love it.
All right, Andres.
This is the Fitness Wisdom Podcast.